What's happening, everybody? All right, so the latest Dodge teaser video is out, the jackhammer video, and in this video it shows the big Leprechaun jackhammering this big pile of golden balls, and it's got the jackhammer being powered by this V8 reciprocating assembly, and on the top it reads 2,538 PSI. What could all of this mean? Well, let me just cut to the chase. What they're referring to is the cylinder pressure inside the engine, and what that basically means is the amount of pressure that's driving that piston down when that engine is at full song. Now, the number that they're quoting you is at peak torque, and what I'm going to be talking to you guys about are horsepower values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that peak torque number that we're looking at, we're talking about the cylinder pressure number here, and I'm just going to translate that into the horsepower figures that those same engines make. Basically, it's just keeping constants together and making the conversation kind of move along a little bit. I'm also going to back math this thing for you guys so you can see where the math is coming from and why I believe this engine is going to make the power that it's going to make. So let's jump right into it. A typical Hellcat is going to make around 1,650 PSI of cylinder pressure. Now, what does that translate to? Well, first you have to get a constant across all of these platforms, and what it looks like is that these platforms have a constant of around 0.4290, give or take just a little bit. So take 1,650 PSI, and we're going to multiply that by 0.4290, and that's going to give us a horsepower of 707 for that engine. Now then, let's do the same for the Demon. The Demon has a peak cylinder pressure of 1,958. So right at about 300 PSI more than a normal Hellcat. And this is with the 840 horsepower tune loaded into the car. At that point, multiplied by the same 0.4290 is going to get you your 840 horsepower. Again, that's the net rating of the engine, same as the Hellcat. So how do we figure out what kind of power this new thing is going to make? Well, we've kind of found a constant, haven't we, with that 0.4290? Take your 2,538 PSI, multiply it by 0.4290, and it comes out with 1,088 horsepower. And you might think, man, is that what kind of power it's going to make? Well, it's looking more like this thing could actually be over 1,000 horsepower. Let me explain to you why. If you go back to the video that's showcasing the 105 at 3.02 times 2.98, remember that it gave a figure of 1,582 CFM. And what I did with that is I converted that 1,582 CFM into a horsepower just using a fairly generic estimator for what kind of horsepower you can hope to see out of a certain amount of CFM. And for a positive displacement supercharged engine, you're looking at somewhere around 1.5 CFM per horsepower. Well, that comes out to 1,054 horsepower, not too far away from 1,088 based on that cylinder pressure that we were just looking at. So we're really starting to look like this car is going to be somewhere around 1,000 horsepower. Now, this really starts to come into play when you start to compare and contrast the numbers that we're getting with what kind of crate engines we've been shown from Dodge in the Direct Connection catalog. When you dive into the Direct Connection catalog, you will find the stock displacement 6.2 liter iron block engines in there. And one of those engines is the C170. And the C170, remember going back to those numbers we were looking at before, has a 105 millimeter throttle body and snout to go along with it. It has a 3.02 upper pulley size. The 2.98, I'm still trying to figure out if that is a supercharger drive ratio, in other words, the ratio of the lower pulley to the upper pulley, or if that simply is just the size of the supercharger, 2.98 liters. You'd call it a 3 liter, but the actual number being 2.9. And in knowing that the 3 liter IHI is using a different rotor pack design that's more efficient, you could easily see that that overdriven supercharger by the standard of the Hellcat and the Redeye, both using a 3.35 inch pulley, could possibly make that 1,500 plus, almost 1600 CFM number a reality. So taking what we know about the other cars, finding the constant, and then applying that to the numbers we've been given, what it looks like is that on E85, which is what we're presuming the fuel to be, which walks in lockstep with the C170 iron block E85 controller equipped crate engine, if you take that engine, those specifications, and translate that into these numbers, it looks like that is what we're going to be getting in this new car. So roughly 1,000 horsepower and E85 compatible, a sensed E85 compatible, which would make it a true flex fuel offering. Let's hope that this is all correct and accurate information, because if it is, that would be awesome. And what makes it even more awesome is the prospect of that technology being waterfalled into your Hellcat and your Red Eye that you have in your garage. Post up your comments. Let me know what you think. And that's a wrap on this one. Y'all have a great one. Adios.